Welcome to today's Founders Series panel, Blue Economy Industry Outlook. My name is John Wensveen, and I am the Chief Innovation Officer at Nova Southeastern University and Executive Director of the Alan B. Levan NSU Broward Center of Innovation. Before we get into a discussion with our panelists, I'd like to take an opportunity to provide an overview of the Alan B. Levan NSU Broward Center of Innovation. The Levan Center is a public-private partnership between Nova Southeastern University and Broward County. We are building an economic and education development engine in the form of an innovation center that is an opportunity gateway for South Florida with local, regional, national, and international impact. One of our goals is to better link the South Florida innovation ecosystem by offering customized programs, events, and wraparound services to support the founder's journey from birth of an idea through successful exit of a company or global expansion. Our three themes include innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. Our four pillars are ideate, incubate, accelerate, and post-accelerate. Our six outcomes include breakthrough ideation, the creation of new technologies, a talent skills pipeline, company formation, new jobs, and scaling of early stage and young startup companies or global expansion. We are launching a purpose-built 54,000 square foot facility in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, now in the final 2 weeks of construction, and we look forward to opening next month. We launched our first virtual Ideate program earlier this month, and applications are now open for our first virtual Incubate program that starts in July. Information about programs and details of our progress can be found on our website at nova.edu/innovation. The World Bank defines the blue economy as the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods, and jobs, while preserving the health and ocean of the ecosystems. According to the Ocean Engineering Society, the blue economy has become a popular phrase lately, yet there are various definitions. Some groups define the blue economy as all sectors associated with a water asset, include traditional ocean economy sectors such as oil and gas, commercial and recreational activities, shipbuilding and transportation, and construction. The blue economy seeks to recognize newer sectors and includes ocean exploration and research, technology development and operations, nowcasting and forecasting, and even urban concerns. Today's panel will discuss the growing importance of the blue economy in government, academia, and startup constructs. The key objectives for today's panel are to educate the local entrepreneurship and business community on both the top blue economy skills growing in 2021, as well as opportunities that we are seeing in the blue economy sector. To understand the future opportunities in the blue economy, as well as the investment opportunities, to address the need of building the ocean impact or blue economy startup pipeline, to provide a global outlook within blue economy, and to understand investment opportunities within the sector. Well, I'm choking on him, suffering from a bit of a cold today, but I'd like to welcome Alec Bogdanoff, principal and co-founder at Brizaga, Daniel Kleinman, the founder and CEO at Seaworthy Collective, Sean O'Hanlon, the principal at Tierra, Verde, and Shelby Thomas, founder and CEO at the Ocean Rescue Alliance. So let's get right into the discussion with our panelists. Please feel free to introduce yourselves as we start with the very first question. Tell us who you are and what you do, and don't be shy. So Shelby, we're going to lead off with you, if that's all right. So I'd like to open today's discussion and ask you and the rest of our panelists to define what the blue economy sector is and how it relates to your own respective area, and what are the trends, challenges, opportunities, and strategies that are evolving within the sector. It's a very loaded question, so feel free to take it any direction that you wish.
Yeah, thanks, John. So certainly a definitely loaded question. The blue economy can mean a lot to many different people. In respect to some of the work we do with the Ocean Rescue Alliance, we're a marine conservation and restoration nonprofit that implements different techniques to scale marine restoration. So we predominantly focus on creating artificial reef structure throughout South Florida that provides biodiverse habitat, while also implementing specific applied restoration techniques for coral, oyster, and mangrove restoration. So from some of our work, we really tap into different opportunities with utilizing tourism, with some of our artificial reef sites tying in art as a problem solver. So really connecting and engaging the community, which creates more of that economic incentive to create a destination that really engages the community. But beyond that, we're also doing different structures that aid in coastal resiliency, which then can tap into, we're looking to emerge technology into clean energy. So we really can tie in a different facet of using clean energy within the ocean sector, as well as technology in a lot of other applied ways, not only from monitoring, but also doing a lot more engagement virtually with people, as well as tying in that tourism and resource management from a fisheries and applied restoration perspective.
Great, appreciate that. Thank you so much. Daniel, let's go to you.
Yeah, so just a quick background on Seaworthy. We are a startup community and venture studio for regenerative ocean solutions. And I say regenerative not only in the sense of going beyond sustainability, but actually in what the blue economy we see envisioning here for South Florida. And so, as far as the trends go, I think, historically a lot has happened in my own experiences. We'll dive in within the fossil fuel and defense fields for the blue economy, primarily being the drivers of that. And a great study, if anyone wants to take a deeper dive into it, is called the Ocean 100, that actually characterizes the 100 corporations making up the majority of the blue economy and seeing how siloed our blue economy historically has been. But looking forward and what we need as far as driving the impact for reversing anthropogenic impact on the planet, really we see that as a regenerative approach and developing systems of solutions that actually help not only create ROI, but actually create positive impact on the oceans that can help heal them and not just sustain them. And so that's really, in my mind, where we see a lot of these opportunities moving forward, from carbon sequestration through seaweeds to, of course, building coast resilience like Shelby is doing at Ocean Rescue Alliance, to even creating this IoT of the ocean, so we actually understand what our impact is rather than just react to it, but actually can create these proactive systems to get ahead of things. So a lot of different ways to connect the dots through what we see as 6 different verticals that are really creating the most impact, but more importantly, really creating local scale regenerative blue economies that then can scale to global scale as we create that collection of local scale impact.
So this is a massive topic, and just between Shelby and Daniel, your introductions, there's obviously so much that we need to cover. I know we're not going to get through all of it today, but we're definitely going to try to scratch more than the surface. Sean, I'd like to pass it over to you. I know we're having some technical issues with camera today, but we're glad to have you with us with voice regardless.
Thank you, John. I've been in the clean tech, climate tech space for over 15 years now. And I started out in marine biology. So my focus, my passion, my focus will always be the marine environment. I really gotten into algae technologies for feed, food, fibers, biofuels, pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, bioactive compounds that we really haven't even gotten into yet. So that segment of the blue economy alone is an incredible vertical that we haven't even begun to scale yet. And once we do, I can see it being $100 billion a year industry easily.
Yeah, and all my research that indicates that too. I think really, I think maybe the pioneering stages of this new opportunity, and you're all change makers, instrumental in changing the world, and we're so glad that you're all with us today. Alec, I'd like to turn it over to you if you could.
Certainly. So I'm Alec Bogdanoff. I'm a principal and co-founder of Brizaga. We're a civil and coastal engineering firm specifically focused on flooding, sea level rise, resilience, and climate change. So thinking about engineering the world in a different way. I am not an engineer. My business partner is. I'm a physical oceanographer and meteorologist, but spent a lot of time in policy and politics. So basically, what I work on is kind of the planning side of these projects. So thinking about vulnerability assessments, adaptation plans, working a lot with local governments. I spent time on Capitol Hill doing ocean and environmental policy. And the blue economy, as you said, is something everyone talks about. Everyone has a different definition. But I think for me, humans live on land generally. And so we need to think about how we access the ocean and what that means and how we interact with it. And specifically for this community, as sea levels rise, the ocean's going to start moving into places it wasn't previously. And we need to start considering how we adapt our community to make sure that we're responsibly considering our oceans as part of that equation.
Yeah, great. Also, all important topics that all of you are already bringing forward. So one of my hopes for today is that we'll be able to unpack the opportunities and challenges as it relates to the blue economy, and where are we truly seeing the most opportunities locally, nationally, globally, and some of that's already been presented, but so we can go into some more depth with that and how it's being implemented. So Sean, I'd like to go back to you again. If you could talk about what you think the opportunities and challenges are.
I think the opportunities are literally wide open in this because when we talk about the blue economy in the aggregate, the market estimate is over $1.5 trillion valuation worldwide. Understanding that the majority of that is oil, gas, and shipping, then you break it down and you have your aquaculture, your mariculture, you have algae production, which is still a very, very small part of it. And then you look at places like Florida that have so much coastline and have a history of aquaculture that really have let it go. And now the opportunities are coming back around for entrepreneurs and investors to bring it back and innovate and scale up to have a major impact just in the state of Florida alone. And what I foresee happening is these various companies starting up or moving to Florida and starting operations. And from the Keys to Jacksonville, you could have a virtual blue corridor where, you have wind energy, you have wave, you have tidal, you have fisheries, you have algae production, and each of those things would create, tens of thousands, and within a decade, I think easily 100,000 jobs.
Okay, so that's great. So there's definitely some trends in there. There's some opportunities and potentially some challenges in there. So Alec, I'd like to come back to you if you could comment on the opportunities and challenges, whether it be locally or nationally or internationally.
Sure. So I can start with, just in Broward County alone, we know that we have $4 to $6 billion of needs to improve seawalls in the next probably about 20 years. We don't have, if you think about marine contractors as part of the blue economy, we don't have enough marine contractors. We need to kind of think about technological innovation in that space. And that's just one piece of a very big puzzle. And so ultimately, I think Sean is right that the market cap on this, depending on how you define the blue economy, is tremendous. And we, for me, pretty much anything having to do with climate change as well, we're going to need more people trained and thinking about this as a problem, and really more importantly, what the solutions are. So that's kind of, I guess I would say, just giving one example. Obviously, we could talk all day on just that alone, but obviously Shelby and Daniel have also a lot of interest in this.
So that is a great segue to Shelby, opportunities and challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly in agreement with both Alec and Sean. I think there's immense opportunities from a variety of different sectors within the blue economy, but some of the challenges certainly rely around not only the awareness factor and educational, but also just that immediate kind of actionable plan to get integrated and what those opportunities are and what exists out there. So one of the factors that we really try to tie in with the Ocean Rescue Alliance is that utilization of art as a problem solver to connect and engage the community. The ocean's often out of sight, out of mind for many people, and a blanket of water. So it's often not in everyone's present thoughts. So we're really trying to take different innovative ways to connect community and culture to start engaging with the ocean. And then that opens up a whole facet of different ways to directly engage. And as an organization, we also want to provide actionable steps where each person or company can have a direct impact, not only with restoration, but helping create and facilitate sites that also regenerate revenue. So if we are creating sites, making sure that these also benefit those entities that create them, as well as the community, we really want to create that investment from the local community on multiple different stages. But certainly, Daniel has a whole outline of challenges that I'm sure he'd address, so I'll let him speak a little more on challenges as well.
I like how you bring forward art as engagement. I had an opportunity to spend some time in the Midwest for a few years, and it's interesting when you have discussions about anything related to water, oceans, etc., climate change, rising tides. It's a new territory, and I like the fact that you can take art to other audiences that might not typically know and create that awareness. So that's a great thing to keep on going. So Daniel, you get to close us out on opportunities and challenges.
Well, I love to go a little bigger on systemic levels. I touched on, the fact that defense and fossil fuels, in my experience, really have monopolized innovation in the space. But the unique thing that I saw coming back to South Florida was the fact that our blue economy is built different. We are 2/3 driven by tourism. And at the same time, on the tech side, we don't have these entrenched private interests in defense and fossil fuels, which on one hand means we can have uninhibited innovation that doesn't serve these existing private interests. And on the other hand means there's a lot more work to be done to actually build up our local tech ecosystem. But that being said, we really have the opportunity to not only drive forward the solutions, but really build the model for an economy that actually solves problems rather than just serving private interests. And so when we look at that as a larger scale just model building where we can actually develop not only the solutions, but really this model that can be duplicated elsewhere, right? The problems we're dealing with here in South Florida can be mirrored in the Caribbean, can be mirrored in South America, even Africa, right? Like the coastlines are coastlines. And yes, of course, different oceans have different, for example, seaweed you can grow. But really, in my mind, the opportunity starts on a systemic level where we're actually, for the first time, developing the solutions without this, catering to the entrenched private interests. And at the same time, creating something that's really democratizing the opportunity for anyone to get into the space. My other, I'll say, jadedness about the field is how exclusionary historically the oceans field and the ocean tech field has been. And so, and what we're working on at Seaworthy is creating this accessible opportunity for anyone to get into the ocean tech space through our opportunities for sea change. And so really that's kind of the key thing, is how do we actually not only take on the funding silos, but also the social construct silos of the space, with people in the marine sciences thinking you need a PhD to innovate, and people in tech thinking the only place to go is working at SpaceX, right? How do we bridge those constructs and bring people into the field and say, look, there's impactful work to be done on this planet, and you don't just have to go within the box of what a marine science degree or an ocean tech background is, right? We need all sorts of different people in this space, from business to engineering to the marine sciences, and we need to open up this opportunity because we have one planet and we got a lot of work to do if we're going to reverse climate change and save our oceans.
So let's keep sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I was going to, if I can add to that, I think that's the biggest aspect, is the need for interdisciplinary collaboration. I'm a firm believer that we have all of our resources there. It's just a matter of effectively connecting the gaps. When we can communicate from outer space and Mars, we certainly can utilize our oceans, which are heavily underexplored and have so much immense resources that we haven't even tapped into yet. Even from a medical perspective, coral reefs have a bunch of untapped resources that we can really look into to really holistically address a lot of our problems. I mean, the ocean's often, as we mentioned, out of sight, out of mind, but it's instrumental as to why we're able to live on Earth. And it's not as of a pressing issue in everyday life of how big of an impact and resource the ocean is for our life as it sits. So it's really important to focus that collaboration, as Daniel mentioned, from different disciplines to really connect and address these issues.
So I think this point of discussion is a really great segue as well into the next level of the discussion. And you're all involved in this ecosystem that just continues to grow. I'd like to know how we can better highlight our local ocean innovators, as well as build the pipeline of ocean impact startups. And Daniel, I'm going to go back to you. I know you're in the space right now. If you could give us some feedback on that.
Yeah, well, building pipelines is kind of our MO. So, really it's to me, it starts at a basic level, right? I think a lot of the incubation and acceleration space for the oceans is existent in other corners of the country, hasn't existed here until, between what Nova's doing, what we're doing. Really though, I think it starts from the bottom, right? And a lot of people think that, it takes an ecosystem to build a startup, right? But they forget the base layer, which is it takes a community to build an ecosystem. And so that's really the work that we've been doing, is first saying, how do we bring this community together of people who are not only doing the amazing work, but can empower other people to take the leap into this field, right? And so for us, we're working here in Miami to build the community and build our first, venture studio all the way through Accelerator. But at the same time, Nova's doing amazing work as you guys are at the Levan Center, to build an innovation hub and want to serve the oceans. And so collaboratively and collectively, we can build the ecosystem together, which is why we're excited to share our community and share our pipelines with institutions like yours, where it isn't this, I think we're seeing this evolution of capitalism as far as building these pipelines go, where we know for the scale of problems we need to solve, we need to stop just thinking one person needs to own the space, right? There's not, there will be unicorns, sure, but that isn't the core focus. The core focus is, let's just get these solutions out there and work together to really facilitate that. And as we do that, again, collaboratively, we really can drive forward the entire field and build the ecosystem together. And so that's really, to me, kind of the core focus, and how we start building an inclusive ecosystem, not only inclusive of people outside of the ocean space, but inclusive of each other's efforts, where we can really work together to drive everything forward.
So I like that you stated community first. Community then builds an innovation ecosystem. You just can't rebrand it, just can't invent it and create some fancy words around something and it exists. So you're all innovation ecosystem builders, and this is why I really love today's panel. So Alec, could I give it to you to take over your comments on that?
Yeah, I my question I always ask folks is, have you listened to the market? I think one of the biggest challenges we have is folks have great ideas and they put them out there. And frankly, like there's a lot of people investing a lot of money in startups, but the market research hasn't necessarily been done appropriately. And I think one of the things we're seeing in Florida is the market's actually screaming, we need this, and folks aren't listening. We see that with our marine industry being, one of our top industries in South Florida, that literally saying we don't have enough space for boats. We need more people working on these technical opportunities. And so, I think part of it is also important to remember that a truly robust ecosystem isn't just folks creating new ideas and implementing, but also ensuring that we, as you guys have aptly noted, as NSU, but we're building the technical skills that are needed to go along with it. Because to really drive this innovation, we're going to need those folks to be a big part of the equation. Yep. And the second thing too is we also are focused on kind of the blue economy, thinking about the oceans, but we also have to think about how humans impact the oceans. And so a lot of things like plastics and polystyrene, especially from a single use perspective, like these are things that impact the ocean, that impact the blue economy, that are challenges that we can start solving as well.
Right. So that's a great point. And when you talk about the market, truly, if you look at history, there's never been more funding opportunities available in our entire life than there is right now. So how do you tie that funding so you have the right money going into the right businesses with the right people and getting that message out? And hopefully events like today help create that increased awareness as we move forward. Shelby, what are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, and so also kind of tying back to some of the other challenges, some of that also is not only the integration into the blue economy, but also around sustainability. As Alec mentioned, there's a lot of things that contribute to impacting our oceans, and then even really starting up a business or economy around that. Looking at the sustainability of that is a whole nother facet of something that we need to look at and address, because even with fisheries, there's a lot of unsustainable fisheries that have high extraction rates, as well as pollution that is eliminating from these actual activities. So looking into those sustainable pathways to help open up opportunities and really connect and engage the community within that as well.
Great points. And Sean, you get the opportunity to close this one out. How do we build a pipeline of ocean impact startups, and how do we highlight?
I look at it of what do we want the end results to be? And the end results is obviously we want growth, but we want to, as Daniel has said, we want to regenerate what has been depleted in the oceans. And when you look at that, I think of three things immediately: scale, scope, and speed. And this decade is going to be the decider. We're either going to scale up, by 10x this decade, or we're not going to make it. To get there, I think you need three things. You need to communicate, collaborate, and communicate. And first and foremost, we need to break down those silos, because if we are not working together, we are simply not going to succeed, either individually and especially not as an industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And that's really the whole purpose behind the Levan Center of Innovation, is to break down the silo system in the technology scene alone, which then has many side entries into different types of targeted industries. But what we need is a movement that creates awareness that allows the competitive forces to be eliminated, where the stakeholders are coming together as one. So South Florida is one region, and this one region has the potential to have local, regional, national, and international impact. And again, I think the subject matter is obviously international in terms of interest. And what we do here, we're a case study for what the rest of the world can do, I believe, in many ways. So Alec, I'm going to lead off with you on this next question about the blue economy sector and how it's contributing to the South Florida region. Could you paint us a picture of what the landscape looks like from your perspective?
That's a loaded question. So, I think that, frankly, it is not just something that we can do, it's something we have to do. These challenges are, frankly, an existential crisis in a lot of ways for our community, whether we're talking about sea level rise, climate change, oceans, saving our reefs. When you have a a society that is here because people love living near the water, because people travel here because of our beaches. It's not a question of, should we do this because we know we have to. It's a question of how we're going to do this. And so for me, I think there is just an infinite amount of support. You have a business community that is rallying behind this in a tremendous way. I like to, tell a little anecdote, that so we have a flood control system that's quite aging. And we actually, the business community advocated for an agency not to lower taxes, to spend money on our environment and fixing our flood control system. And so we are at a point where, folks who generally are supportive of lower taxes are saying, if we don't fix this, it's going to hurt us all in the long run. So to me, the ocean's the limit. I don't want to say the sky's the limit because I feel like that. There's pretty much an open platform for anybody who wants to come here and innovate and help kind of drive change.
So one of the things I want to do as we get to the very end of our panel today is figure out how do we connect those networks with our local network. Who do they reach out to? And we're happy to help facilitate that. If anybody wants to reach out to us here, we'll give contact details at the end, and happy to put everybody in touch with those on our panel here today where it makes sense. So Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Florida Ocean Alliance put out a report every so often, definitely part of my slide deck and business plan. I believe Florida's blue economy, if I get it wrong, hopefully I don't butcher it, but it was $25 billion blue economy, and 2/3 of it is made up by ecotourism right now. But, again, and I want to kind of further Alec's point, really a lot of people are very short-term focused when it comes to economies. And obviously climate change and sea level rise are not that far away, although a lot of people want to think they are, which is why home values are still skyrocketing for some reason. But it's really, to me, how do we bridge this gap of what we know is coming and the solutions we can do to be proactive now? One of the other key things about sea level rise is the fact that it's actually going to intrude on our aquifers. And long before we're underwater, we're actually going to have a major drinking water crisis. So how do we make desalination a thing in South Florida when people think they have, free access to fresh water, right? It's a lot of these things that we have to not only shift the dynamic of doing blue economy work in general, making it a field, but also being proactive rather than reactive. Mm-hmm. And, that is definitely a mountain, or just a real hill to climb. But it's at the same time, I think, something that we're seeing as a result of the pandemic, where people are starting to realize we need to get ahead of things because our interaction with nature is just so backwards. And if we can't do it here, then where? And that's really, to me, part of what's the opportunity of not only taking advantage of this growing awareness, but also the whole Miami tech momentum we've seen, and how we can channel out to not only serving general solutions the world needs, but especially solutions that are actually for our community and with our community.
So is it safe to say, if I paraphrase, the future is now, what are we doing about it?
Right.
Again, I'm glad that you brought up short-term thinking, because there are different agendas and different groups and stakeholders, and we do have to think long-term and work backwards. So great, appreciate that. Sean, your thoughts, South Florida region.
I think there's been a long period of sleeping on this. People have forgotten what people have in mind when it comes to the blue economy here is boating. We're between Miami and Fort Lauderdale, we're the boating capital of the world. But it has to go beyond that. It has to be more than that. It has to be more than tourism. It has to be more than fishing and diving and those things. It has to be things that have a much broader impact and a much deeper impact long term. And the way I see to do that is really incubating these startups and fostering and accelerating and working collaboratively, between Miami and Tampa and Jacksonville and Pensacola and the other ports, around the state, to show that the blue economy can be a major contributor to Florida's economy. And it doesn't just have to be about tourism and real estate and agriculture. I think that's one of the ways that we really need to change the narrative of Florida's future, in that, yes, we have threats. And I love Daniel's point. He's dead on when he says that, saltwater intrusion in the aquifers, that is going to be a major consideration long before anything else. And, that's another area of opportunity. If we look at it that way. So far, what people have talked about are problems, and it's like, okay, great. I think we're past the point of quote unquote raising awareness. I think enough people have been made aware now of the problems. And now it's time to start talking about solutions, and not just talking about solutions in a way where government is the impetus for those solutions, but that the private sector has a major role to play, and that it's both beneficial to the environment and to the economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll take that a step further. So we have awareness, which we can always constantly concentrate on and increase, but we have to start implementing, and then we have to measure the outcomes of that implementation to see what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. And just paraphrasing. And Shelby, what are your thoughts in terms of how the blue economy sector is contributing to the South Florida region?
Yeah, so certainly in agreement with Sean of the narrative is needing to change. We're beyond really needing to protect these resources. Florida predominantly is known for all of our water resources, and inherently that blue economy is focused around tourism and utilizing these resources, yet we're not protecting them. Even within the springs, eutrophication and heavy nutrient fluxes is polluting our freshwater ecosystems, as well as extending beyond to the ocean ecosystems. A lot of our current sources are essentially really just Band-Aid approaches. For example, beach renourishment is done in almost every single county in Florida. Billions of dollars is pumped into this activity, which is just dredging sand to put it on the beach that gets wiped away from the next storm. And it's just a Band-Aid approach that's perpetuating problem. And all we do, even from medicine to environmental, is typically reactive. And we need to switch to preventative and proactive. And we need to shift into really investing into coastal infrastructure to help with the protection and regeneration of our resources. And then integrating that narrative to shift public perception. And that's where we really provide that unique way of utilizing art as a catalyst to communicate. It can also extend beyond to create that economic incentive to create a corporate responsibility. If you can think of all these coastal developers and hotels that are on coastlines, well, they're not directly contributing to all of those beach renourishment resources. That's typically all the tax-paying dollars. Well, there's a cap for that. And if we can start shifting that story and making everyone responsible, enough of the finger pointing of who's going to be responsible for this, we need to all take accountability and start investing in our own way, including corporate and coastal developers, to now where they're helping invest and protect that immediate resource that they're exploiting as well. And shifting it to where they're more integrated and intimate with it, where they can craft it where it tailors to them, to their specific needs. And that's where we have this immense ability with the blue economy that it can be so unique and pertain to each individual company or corporation that also is helping the environment. So, and that's a big shift beyond the blue economy. We need to shift all of our environmental programs to have some type of economic incentive, because from a sustainability aspect, it has to be there, and it can be integrated within a lot of systems. And so that's really the unique thing with technology now, even from we've been getting in a little bit to crypto art as a way to help back using blockchain, linking restoration projects. So there's so many unique ways now that it's just up to that creative ability to tie it in.
So let's continue with this piece of the conversation. We're going to start with Alex, but I like what you're saying, Shelby. And if you think about one rule, there are no rules, and you could reinvent the world, and you think about all the different stakeholders that are involved in the blue economy now and in the future, but let's just focus on things like government, higher education, and industry. What kind of a role can they play that really helps advance the conversation, but takes it beyond conversation into an actual strategic initiative? Again, I think all of these questions are loaded with loaded answers, but I want to scratch the surface. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the reality is that most of our infrastructure is controlled by government. And so when we talk about the connection to land, ports, beaches, roads, these are all things that the government has to consider, whether it's, changing the way we deal with runoff from our stormwater system to ensuring that, we start thinking about alternative ways to ensure that our beaches are vibrant and viable for the long term. We ultimately need, government as part of the solution. This is the ultimate public-private partnership, right? Even if individuals wanted to do everything themselves, whether it's going through code enforcement or whatever you need to, it's government has to be on board. And so to me, that's why at least this problem in general, we need to make sure that we bring them to the table and have these conversations continuously. So it takes a lot, by the way. I think, as all of us know, government doesn't move as fast as the private sector. So a big part of what I do on a daily basis is education, meeting with elected officials, with staff, talking to them why this needs to matter and why it needs to be a part of the, for example, the procurement process. If it doesn't say it in the request for proposal, people probably aren't going to add it unless you ask for it. So there's a lot that needs to be done. And so it's great. I will say a great start is that what you all have created is a public-private partnership with Broward County.
And I'm glad you brought public-private partnership up, because I think that internationally, that is really the future. It's better co-invested strategic models among all of the stakeholders rather than operating in independent silos. And hopefully we can increase the way things are done in a much more efficient manner moving forward. So acceleration is often key. So with that, I'd like to transition to Sean for your thoughts in terms of what these different stakeholders can do to advance the blue economy conversation.
I think a big part of everything that we're talking about, and I don't know that it's really, I don't think that most people have realized this, dawned on them yet. And that a big part of what we're talking about is environmental resources management and environmental health and safety. To move the needle and to move it at an accelerated pace, ESG reporting standards, environmental social governance, and quite frankly, carbon fees and dividends will move this faster than anything from a public policy perspective. I know the ESG reporting standards are coming. I know they're coming rather rapidly. And the reason I say that is because Larry Fink of BlackRock Capital wrote an open letter at the beginning of the year that was published and made it absolutely clear that the ESG was going to be BlackRock's focus from now on. Immediately after that, Goldman Sachs, Fidelity, SoftBank, Vanguard all followed suit. And so now there's $750 billion being committed just from Goldman Sachs alone. SoftBank is committing $100 million, investing in Miami on these kinds of startups. And it's there. The appetite is there. The awareness is there. And now it's simply a matter of saying to, governments, both locally, at the state level and at the federal level, it's like, okay, now there needs to be rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. And then those are coming. And I think you're going to see those, I believe within the next couple of years. And so now is the time. Now is the opportunity for everyone who's interested in this or has been interested in this at some level or another to get in, because it is the golden opportunity to both do good and do well.
So that's a great way to conclude with that question. Daniel, your thoughts?
Ooh, I love that Sean brought up the do good and do well thing, because I love to quote Mayor Suarez's, capital of capital for Miami, and we can't do that unless we're also the capital of impact in ESG. So that's a huge, huge opportunity. But I love to actually take a step further and say, kind of counter to a little bit of Alec's point. Historically, policy has driven innovation, right? And again, to your point, it doesn't necessarily move fast enough to actually solve the problems we need to solve. And so we're seeing, in my mind, this dynamic shift of innovation needing to start driving policy if we're actually going to take on these big problems. And so I think that's really the core thing, is where we need to just create ways to implement things quickly, right? For example, Biscayne Bay, putting $20 million out to fix the bay. Well, that's one way we can finally start making mariculture and shellfish aquaculture a thing here. Right. It's really, to me, how do we yes, we need to work with government. I'm not going to deny that. But how do we come up with methods to actually lower those barriers to entry and make things an accessible thing? And one thing that I'm really excited about that Shelby briefly touched on is crypto. I've been taking the dive deeper into that. And when we talk about incentives for these solutions, right, crypto could be actually the thing that really unlocks making a lot of these things that could be difficult to have sustainable businesses actual incentivized and profitable business, right? If Dogecoin can have tangible value, then just imagine if removing plastic from the ocean could, right? And so really at the same time on the government side, right, those subsidies have existed for fishing. And now again, the policy to actually subsidize the environmental impact might take a while, but crypto could be one of those things that fast forwards that and actually fast tracks us to developing the solutions we need in the time frame we actually need it.
And I think the world was watching South Florida and Miami in particular recently with this big crypto conference. And I think that there's another movement that's occurring out there, and it's interesting how it's interacting with all these different sectors like blue economy. Shelby, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really like Daniel's point of innovation driving some of the policy, and that's oftentimes what we definitely immediately need, but really taking that into the private sector as well and shifting that accountability, responsibility, and enabling different corporations to directly contribute is 100% necessary. And as Sean mentioned, it's really great to see some of the ESG impacts getting shifted, as well as the sustainable development goals getting implemented and hopefully a requirement by everyone eventually. So that's a really positive movement that we're also seeing influx to South Florida, throughout Florida, to help dedicate funds to our coastal resources. And as Daniel mentioned, we have such an emerging economy right now that has so many different opportunities to really revamp and help revitalize and restore our ecosystems. And I think that's also the interesting thing with the crypto. Again, that's a lot of above my head. I'm a coral biologist, but I do see the really big value of using this emerging technology sector to really help advance and really connect people with the marine ecosystems. And so one of the aspects of the cryptocurrency is there's actually using different NFTs, non-fungible tokens, is being used in the rainforest to help protect against deforestation, where they're creating a tree into an NFT, a living tree. So as it grows, it's adding value. And now that tree is worth more alive than it is dead. And now why can't we apply that to our coral reef ecosystems, our oyster reefs, our different restoration projects? So one of the things we started working on was doing these different ocean conservation art pieces that directly link to restoration projects. So now we're putting a value asset on a living restoration project that we're doing, but also integrating it with art to help bring awareness and really connect a whole different economic opportunity to invest in some of these ecosystem projects. So really excited to see how this shifts through the years. And I think we're in a really great spot in Florida to see how this changes.
Great. So with that, we're going to switch gears for just a moment. And I know that we have a number of people in our listening audience that are really interested in what the future of work looks like within the blue economy. And I'm going to combine a couple of questions into one, but technology is moving at such a rapid pace. We're literally in this age of acceleration that's never going to stop. It's going to take on all these different life cycles as we move forward. But if you think about the future of work as it relates to the blue economy, what does it really look like? And are these emerging technologies really impacting the future? And how does that determine the type of skill sets that are required, the talent that you may need within your own respective organizations or others that you're partnered with in your network? What should we be planning for now so that we've got the right talent for the future? And with that, I think I'd like to start with Sean, please.
I think that it is not what most people think, what most people believe. I don't think it is training for specific skill sets, because what I'm noticing, not just in the blue sector, in the blue economy, but on the larger clean tech, climate tech, is there are a great number of people who are in the space and have gotten in the space and are coming in the space who on the surface have no background whatsoever in relation to what they're doing, whether that's controlled environment agriculture, whether it's algae tech, whether it's biofuels, innovative biofuels production, and even the energy sector, energy transition. There are people who are coming from different perspectives, who are really changing the way that those sectors are both looked at and the way they are evolving, and quite frankly, that fresh perspective is really accelerating those verticals in a way that I've never seen before. And I've been around this for a while, and I've finally realized that different perspective, that totally fresh new perspective, is what's been needed. Because, even myself, I really looked at in the beginning was, okay, I approached this from a biological perspective and then went from there. And I'm seeing that's not enough. I don't have all the answers. So I have to reach out to others like Daniel and Shelby and Alec and, confer with them. It's like, okay, well, what do you guys think? And how do we build this? How do we advance it? And how do we scale it? And I find that dynamic really is much stronger than anyone that comes in with a degree in marine biology or a master's degree in business administration or whatever the case may be. And I am actually excited about that, because it really is throwing the entire the field wide open for innovation in ways that I don't think any of us know yet.
So that's a great point. And I think the whole purpose of innovation is not to have any boundaries, right? Otherwise, you confine your way of thinking and doing. So, Alec, what are your thoughts on the future of work and skill sets that are required?
It's funny listening to Sean talk about this. I'm like, this is exactly our challenge as a company. We're an engineering consulting firm, but as folks know, the best way to get thrown out of my office is to say, yeah, we've always done it that way. It's because we can't solve challenges the likes of which we've never dealt with before by doing things the same way. And so for me, creativity and passion are the most important things. And not everybody's going to be, that passionate about saving the planet, but passionate about solving a problem. Just on staff, we have political scientists, engineers, both mechanical and civil and coastal. We have, I'm a policy trained oceanographer. We have environmental scientists, and we're a relatively small company, but we know that we need a diverse skill set because we all bring a different perspective to the table. And so, diversity of ideas and diversity of people are going to be, to me, one of the most important things in building a team and making sure that we don't have the same people trying to solve the same problems the same way. We need to really start thinking differently in a big way, and that requires creating innovative and creative teams.
So great point. So I had to chuckle out loud when you said, how you get thrown out of your office. That really does block innovation when you got to be open to doing new ways or new ways of doing things. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Shelby.
Yeah, so certainly agree. I mean, I think it's just uncharted territory where there's a huge need for innovation from an open-minded creativity perspective. And I think that's the most enabling factor is you can come in from so many different skill sets and disciplines. And often, I as a scientist, I know how hard it is to get scientists to work with other groups and be collaborative. And that's really big need, is that interdisciplinary approach from different disciplines, because that's when you get that unique creativity where you can combine and problem solve and really address these solutions holistically from different perspectives. And that's certainly needed in any kind of environmental restoration aspect. But I think that's the best thing about really now that this age and emerging technology is there's things that are being invented that nobody would have ever thought would have been tied to ocean or the blue economy. And it's going to play such an instrumental factor. And I think that the skill sets are certainly evolving, but now it's really opened the field to other disciplines to where people can have immense impact and not even be a scientist. And I always advocate for that. As a scientist, oftentimes it's hard to communicate and get people to care about it. So some people with a bigger platform, even from a social impact perspective, can have way more of an immense impact than we can just from having that platform. So really integrating these different disciplines, getting people that are passionate and inspired to create and innovate is critical for addressing our immediate problems.
Great. All great points. Daniel?
Yeah, well, I got to echo the radical collaboration piece. I think is one of the most critical pieces. I think the whole point in what we've seen in tech historically is there's a lot of ego there, but here the problems we need to solve go beyond egos, right? Beyond that, though, I do think, of course, inclusivity is a major piece. Right now we've left so much great talent off the table just because of how historically exclusionary the ocean field has been. I always echo my experience, literally taking 7 months of following up to get just my internship at Woods Hole, and then never really having an opportunity to get back into the ocean science and technology space working for the Navy the last 5 years. But really, it's, to me, more than anything else, decentralized. And I think this is kind of the interesting piece when we touch on not only emerging technology, but really where the world is going post-pandemic. To me, I think, again, it's kind of actually tying together all these different pieces of collaboration where knowing there isn't this competitive focus and that we just need to build things to actually solve problems globally, right? We can actually lean into not only sharing resources, but really sharing our customers, sharing the access to investors, right? Where we're actually building this ecosystem regionally and then locally, regionally, and then globally. And that's kind of the real view that I see is, for Seaworthy, we're building the centralized community network, resources, and access to capital, but we share that with any venture builder so that we know that these solutions are just getting built, right? Because right now, so many incubators and accelerators are just sitting out there with hope as a strategy that these solutions are just going to pop out of somewhere and they'll be part of helping make the change we need, where we can actually be intentional when we're actually building startups from the ground up and co-creating them with people to actually know we're really implementing the solutions we need. And so that, to me, is kind of the core piece of it, is bringing in, again, that collaborative notion, the inclusivity piece, but more than anything else, this notion that anyone can actually help build this if we just actually put aside the ego and start working toward the solutions we actually need.
So let's touch on what you just said about incubators and accelerators, and they're great models, and there needs to be more of them that reflect all industries and areas of opportunity. But often you'll find that these incubator and accelerator models have gaps where they aren't able to support the entire life cycle of that founder's journey, as an example, among other things. And we're trying to do something much different with what we're building here with the Levan Center of Innovation. But I'm always intrigued when somebody says to me, how can I help you, or what can I do for you? I want to turn it around and ask, how can a center of innovation like the one we're building help you? What can we do to help support the cause and make a difference and increase the networks and do other things? Sean, I'd be interested in your thoughts to start.
Wow. Wasn't expecting that one, John.
That's why we're different. We're not a regular incubator or accelerator. We're the full founder's life cycle. Since
the startup, the ventures and the startups and the incubators and the accelerator programs have really taken off, I'd say, in the last 5 years or so. This is all really new territory. And what I see that, both the benefit of it and the need is really to bring people together. I see that as whether it's your center or another center, or in Orlando or here in Miami or wherever it may be, just the fact of bringing people together and putting them in the same room, not just for events, but for talks, and to make introductions, really, as a way to for founders and investors to get together, and have pitches and coaching and mentoring and the whole 9 yards. I think the best function, if I had my druthers, it would really be for a nonstop way of making introductions, because I've always done this at conferences and summits and things that I've been to. I make it a point to make introductions of other people, because I know that say it's Daniel and Alec or Shelby and myself, whatever, that, okay, those two may not see the benefit in collaborating and working together, but I do. So I will say, hey, there's someone I'd like you to meet, and make the introductions and talk, and then make the and then really promote that conversation in what I see as the benefit of them getting together is.
So collision stations and matchmakers is what I'm getting out of that response. And I think that's truly what the purpose of an innovation center is. And I know exactly the model that we're building is around that: the programs, the events, the services, the networking, the facilitation, the moderators, the mentors, etc. So I don't want to steal anybody's thunder in terms of the response, so I'll reserve my own answers to the question. Alec, I'd like to know what your thoughts are. How can centers of innovation generally help support you?
So, I always say that I feel like an idea is probably 10% of a business. And probably the most important decision you'll ever make is who you're going to build that company with. Startups are either grow or die based off co-founders. And so to me, being able to find a place where you can find like-minded individuals and really kind of, I don't want to say shop for a co-founder but you need to build that relationship. You need to build long-lasting relationships and really get to know people. To me, this idea of providing the full scope of services is really important, because a lot of places it's, okay, we're going to ideate with you, and then you go here and they're going to incubate, and then this group's going to accelerate. And every time you're building new relationships, and frankly, building a business is complicated. I can tell you as someone who's done it, whether it's legal, accounting, intellectual property, marketing, hiring in HR, insurance, all of these things end up being really complex and taking a lot of time. And being able to call someone and say, hey, how do I, let's talk about cybersecurity as part of general liability insurance. Do I need it? I know it's like we could talk all day, but that's a little example of like a really complex problem that's just one part of one thing I did on one day. So to me, that's the opportunity we have, is really to create that space for folks to grow and learn together.
And you brought up a really valid point about your vested people that are involved in your initiative. And I've said repeatedly on our virtual panels that there's a formula that I learned very early on in the world of entrepreneurship, is that it's the right people, the right plan, and the right money. If you have the wrong people, the wrong plan, or the wrong money, or one element of it, that could lead to failure. So success is based upon the right moves. So with that, Shelby, what are your thoughts? What can we do to help?
Well, certainly outlining the constructs of what you just said and helping facilitate the right connections, if that's within your wheelhouse of helping connect and engage groups with some of the right like-minded people that might be invested in that particular startup or company's mission. And then certainly looking at it from that outsider perspective of assessing the gaps and challenges within different sectors on maybe different opportunities that aren't connected and engaged in the existing organization that might need to be considered. Just as he mentioned, from a security standpoint, maybe somebody wouldn't even think about that, but some stuff can really, fall through the cracks, and just sometimes the littlest of details can make a huge difference on the functionality of an organization and its success. So really just that kind of general assessment from the back standpoint of taking that holistic look and assessing those problems.
Great. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time here on the panel. And what I'd like to do now is enter what I call the lightning round. And I know that there's so much that we have to talk about. And I mentioned to our team here yesterday when we were talking that we're probably going to have to do a second panel if you're inclined to do so, because there's more detailed meat that we need to really address with the topic. But in 30 seconds or less, if you could say something that you need to get off your chest, you're just burning to say it, that you haven't had an opportunity to say it today, what would that be? And Shelby, I'd like to lead with you.
Okay, great. Wow. So yeah, a lot. But just really the essential thing we really strive to do with the Ocean Rescue Alliance is create a direct impact that every individual can have or company to get involved. Some of those can be investable, but we have from a variety of ways to start a project, create different ecosystems, actually contribute to restoration. And then we have a lot of education and citizen science activities that go around each project. So lots of ways to get involved. Certainly visit our websites to get involved as well, oceanrescuealliance.org. We're actually doing our next artificial reef deployment July 15th, Broward County with Dania Beach. It's going to be off the pier. So if anyone's around locally, come check that out. We'll be announcing it hopefully now in a few days. I'm verifying with the barge operator today if we're going to be locking in that date. It's weather dependent. So lots of things coming up. Visit our websites, and we'd be happy to talk more on coastal resiliency, restoration, and other aspects of our organization.
That sounds exciting. Let us know the details. We're happy to help co-promote it for you. Alec, what do you need to just tell us that we haven't had the opportunity to talk about?
These aren't problems that we should do. These are problems we have to do. we need to really innovate and we need to work together. That's we have to be collaborative to solve these problems. And I would say you should attend Seaworthy collective events because they're great too.
Absolutely. So, Sean,
I'm gonna mention two things. Algae tech. Algae, for me, it's algae for almost everything. It's algae for carbon capture and storage. It's algae for feed, for food, for fibers, for renewable chemicals, for inks and dyes, for all kinds of bio-based materials and composites that really are and open an entire new field of possibilities across the board. And in addition to that is collaborate. We collectively have to reach out to other organizations, to other individuals, and connect and really start working together to move this forward.
Great, very good points. And Daniel, you get the final closing remarks in your 30 seconds.
Well, I'll just repeat the broken record of collaboration to start. If there's any takeaway from today, that's the big one. I think the ocean space has been siloed for so long, and it's awesome that we're all in this spirit. And for Levan Center to be able to share their resources and pulling resources of all of us together to drive the field forward is really what's necessary for us to actually solve these big problems. And so if you guys want to get involved with what we're working on at Seaworthy, it's seaworthycollective.com or at Seaworthy Collective on social media. But most importantly, there is no limitation to getting involved in this space. I think that's the biggest thing we need to dispel, is that if you just have a passion for the oceans and have something to bring to the table, you got to just take the leap. And that's why we offer this inclusive opportunity for anyone to get involved. So don't be shy, reach out. There's our website, plenty of ways to get in touch. Most importantly, all these people on this panel are accessible and doing amazing work. So if you're interested in this space, the time is now. So
feel free in our listening audience to make contact, and if we can help facilitate and make connections, we're more happy to do that, as well as promote your own messages through our own social media channels. So in terms of key takeaways, the blue economy is an emerging concept which encourages better stewardship of our ocean or blue resources and aims for improvement of human well-being and social equity while significantly reducing environmental risks and ecological scarcities. Today we discuss trends, challenges, opportunities, and strategies related to the blue economy, including talent skills needed and emerging areas of opportunity for entrepreneurs and investors. And I know that we only scratched the surface there. We have a lot more to do, and that's why I'd love to have you all back for round two if we can. There's a growing startup pipeline, and despite the challenges associated with the degradation of ocean resources, lack of investment in human capital for employment and development in innovative blue economy sectors, and inadequate care for marine resources and ecosystem services of the oceans, the future is full of opportunities, and we can only be optimistic when change makers like all of those here on our panel chart a path for the future. So you are all certified change makers and game changers. You're literally changing the world. So I cannot thank all of you enough for today's participation in our virtual event. Thank you for everything that you're doing related to innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, and more. We will welcome you back at any time. Thank you, Alec Bogdanoff from Brizaga, Daniel Kleinman from Seaworthy Collective, Sean O'Hanlon from Tierra, Verde, and Shelby Thomas from the Ocean Rescue Alliance. The Alan B. Levan Industry Broward Center of Innovation will open next month. In the meantime, you're offering scheduled virtual events and programs, and you can view our calendar by visiting our webpage at nova.edu/innovation. And we have a temporary webpage at the moment, and there is a very innovative website in development for the future here, in the not too distant future. You can email us at innovation@nova.edu, or you can call our hotline at 954-262-TECH, that's TECH, and one of our friendly operators will be standing by to assist. Don't forget to check us out on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you for joining us today. Stay safe and healthy, and this concludes today's virtual panel. Thank you again, everybody. Greatly appreciate your willingness to be here with us.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we're off the air. And thank you. I had questions. I can't get to them all, but we got some of them, and we got your voice out there.
Did we talk about collaboration?
Sure, let's talk about collaboration. You got a big collision station being built right above my head here, and see if you as a group or have the opportunity.